How is the keto or low-carb diet working as far as your weight? Nearly everybody loses weight initially when they go from a standard diet to a keto diet. But sometimes they stall at a certain point and just can't seem to lose another pound. In this video, I'll share some practical helps concerning the issue of your weight and the low-carb diet. And I'm going to shock you by disagreeing, at least somewhat, with a couple of points that you've heard again and again from the keto experts. Before we get to the main video, I want to say a great big thank you to those of you who supported our mission to Nigeria last October and November with your prayers and financial contributions. You really came through for us, and we appreciate it. Benedict and I sat down and shared our thoughts about this mission along with lots of pictures and video clips a while back, and I finally was able to complete the video. There'll be a link in the description below where you can click on it and go straight to our video report about our ministry in Nigeria. Okay, let's talk about the keto or low-carb diet and the weight issue. As I mentioned, I'm going to get a little radical here by disagreeing with, or at least qualifying, a couple of statements that you've heard from the keto promoters over and over. Let's consider this one. Carbs provoke excess insulin, and high insulin promotes fat storage and weight gain. Well, now, don't get too upset. I do agree with that. It's not that I disagree. I think the evidence is pretty clear that high-carb diets typically lead to obesity, and it does provoke excess insulin when you eat a lot of carbs. I've said that again and again. But what I need to qualify that statement with is the fact that this does not prove that anyone on a low-carb diet will automatically lose weight, and anyone on any other kind of a diet will automatically gain weight. It's not quite as simple as we've made it. The truth is, there are many who have gone on a vegan diet and eaten a fairly high amount of carbs, and they've not been afraid of potatoes as long as they're sweet, haven't been afraid of rice as long as it's brown, and they have lost weight. You can go to Amazon and check out the reviews from books by some of the vegan doctors, and you will find all kinds of testimonies from people who have lost weight by following their advice and doing the vegan diet. Now, by our standards, most of these people are eating a high-carb diet, although in truth, to go to a clean vegan diet from a standard diet will almost surely result in carbohydrate reduction because you'll stop eating junk food, and there are a whole lot of carbs as well as calories in junk food. Here's the deal. Whenever you go from a standard diet, where you eat anything and everything, to another type of diet, especially one that promotes more natural foods and less junk foods, you will lose weight because all sorts of foods that you used to eat are no longer allowed. If you change overnight, you will experience a very significant drop in the calories that are in your diet. And this is true whether you're going vegan, keto, carnivore, paleo, or any other diet, because all these diets, by definition, restrict certain foods, and often many foods that you used to eat freely. The vegan can no longer eat meat, dairy products, or eggs. The keto dieter gives up on sugar, most bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes. And the natural result is weight is going to come off in both cases. There's almost no getting around it. When I first realized I had to cut my carbs for the sake of my blood sugar and I changed my diet, I knew very quickly what I could not eat. But I didn't really know too much about what I could eat. There were a lot more thou shalt nots in my diet than there were thou shalts. My weight went from the high 180s into the mid 150s in a very short order of time. Now, I wasn't trying to lose weight, although I needed to. I was just trying to keep my blood sugar in line. But in the course of dropping most of the carbs, I was also cutting out a lot of the calories that had been coming into my body, and weight loss was inevitable. And that brings me to a keto mantra which I've never fully been convinced of, and that is the idea that calories simply don't count. The truth is, calories do count. Overweight people eat a lot of food every day, and skinny people don't eat that much. My dad was skinny nearly all of his life, and he complained often that he just couldn't gain weight. But he ate tiny little portions of food, and he almost never snacked. Of course he was skinny. Anybody would be with his diet. He ate carbs freely, but with his small portions, he wasn't getting nearly as many carbs as those who ate huge mountains of food at every meal. Most of the weight loss systems all work on the basis of restricting food portions and calories. With Weight Watchers, for example, you're allowed so many points of food per day, and when you've used up those points, that's it. You're done eating for the day. And people lose a lot of weight following this plan. Of course, many of them gain it back because almost nobody's going to spend the last half of their life counting points and following that system. People have bariatric surgery, and what happens? They end up with a stomach so small that a tiny bit of food fills them up. They cannot eat near as much as they could before. And what's the result? They lose weight, of course. Another example is that during World War II, people in the concentration camps were all skinny, but it wasn't because they were all on keto diets. Most of them were eating bread and beans, a fairly high-carb diet. But they were not eating very much bread and beans, barely enough to sustain life, and they all lost weight, way too much weight, until they were literally skin and bones. The problem with calorie restriction is that, although it does work, it is almost impossible for most people to keep it up over a lifetime. Many can do it until they reach their target weight, and once they get there, they ease up a bit on their rules. They start cheating a little bit more, and lo and behold, the weight they once lost comes back, often with compound interest. When diabetics adopt the keto or low-carb diet, they're not doing it to look better in their genes. They're almost always doing it to save their lives and their health. So in most cases, they're not trying to reach some kind of target weight, and therefore they're less likely to backslide and go back the other direction, although some do, sad to say. And in addition to the fact that by doing keto, they're restricting a lot of foods that they used to eat, there is another factor that helps low-carbers lose weight. With many keto foods, you're not nearly as likely to pig out and overeat as you would be with high-carb foods. Take chips, for example. Remember when you used to go to a Mexican restaurant and they'd give you huge bowls of corn chips and salsa to snack on before your meal arrived? Man, I used to eat those things like crazy, one after another after another. I never seemed to fill up on those chips and salsa. And lasagna is another example of a food I could never fill up on, and big monster cinnamon rolls, and, well, so many high-carb foods you just want to eat and eat and eat. And I could do just that, eat and eat those high-carb foods. But some of the major components of a keto or a low-carb diet are things like vegetables, salads, eggs, and meat. And although I enjoy them, I never really can seem to pig out on them. At some point, I just get tired of eating them and I stop. Not because I've stuffed myself to the gills, but because I'm just tired of eating them. Additionally, many high-fat, low-carb foods are very satiating, and they will fill me up without really filling me up, if you know what I mean. What this means is that the keto or low-carb diet makes it easier to restrain yourself, and as a result, you can often keep at a reasonable weight without hardly trying. So keto or low-carb diets are clearly the best diets for losing weight and keeping it off. But there is one problem that causes some to stall in their weight loss. Well, actually, there are two. First, some just start eventually cheating here and there, and the cheating increases to the point that they're really not doing keto at all. Their daily carbs run over 100 grams, and that's not a keto diet. But second, in many cases, when you've been cutting your carbs for quite a while, you start doing research and you end up collecting recipes of all kinds of low-carb foods that you can use to substitute for some of the high-carb foods. You're no longer in the position of not knowing what to eat or not having many food items on your menu. You have found all kinds of keto breads and keto desserts and keto rice and keto mashed potatoes and keto pizza and keto cookies and keto cakes and on and on. You begin to enjoy all your new keto substitutes, and if you're not careful, you'll begin to overeat and your weight loss will stall, or you may start gaining weight. And this is what happened to me as I started discovering all kinds of low-carb foods, low-carb desserts, and low-carb substitutes. I gradually rose back from the 150s to my present weight of close to 170, although I often dip into the 160s from time to time. Now, I have to use a dirty word here, a word which most keto experts and promoters would never use. They think this word is a terrible word and should be banned from the English language. And that word is self-control. Yes, I know that you've been told that calories don't count and that by doing keto you can eat all you want and in as big a portion size as your heart desires. Stuff yourselves until you're entirely satisfied. Just make sure you're eating low-carb foods. Gobble down the nuts. Stuff yourself with cheese. Feast on keto cookies and keto bread. As long as it says keto at the beginning, no worries. But the truth is this: human beings were never meant to live to eat. Rather, we should eat to live and to be healthy. Whether you stuff yourselves with potatoes or stuff yourselves with eggs, stuffing yourself is still stuffing yourself, and it's not a good practice. You should never leave the table thinking, I couldn't eat another bite. There should always be a little room left over, the evidence of your self-control. And this is especially important at the dinner meal. Allow me to give a few guidelines for those who need to lose weight or those who've stalled in their weight loss while doing keto or low carb. Now, if you're not eating low carb, then your first step is to start eating low carb or keto, and in many cases, that kind of a diet will be all you need to lose weight and keep it off, but sometimes it takes a little bit more. So for our low carb friends who still struggle with weight, here are Dennis's 7 rules for making sure the weight comes down to where you want it to. Rule number 1, don't stuff yourself. Abraham Lincoln used to eat 1 egg for breakfast with a cup of black coffee. Virtually no carbs and very few calories. No wonder he was skinny. Practice a little self-control. Don't listen to those who assure you that as long as you're eating keto, you can eat all you want. For most of us, we cannot. Rule number 2, time-restricted eating, also called intermittent fasting, will really help. If you can't lose weight on keto alone, you probably will be able to by adding some intermittent fasting and occasional 36 and 48-hour fasts, if your doctor okays this. But whatever you do, don't graze on food, even low-carb food, all day long. If you really need to lose weight, your eating window each day should not exceed 8 hours, and 5 or 6 hours would probably be better. However, if you're taking insulin, that changes the game altogether, and you'll need to consult your doctor before doing any kind of fasting. Number 3, don't take extra portions. Many times when we put food on our plates, that portion size is entirely reasonable. But after eating, we get to thinking, I need a little more than this. So we help ourselves, and before we know it, we've eaten twice as much as we originally intended. Put a reasonable amount of food on your plate, and lock the doors to your plate and your stomach. Don't go for that second helping. Number 4, be especially careful with nuts and cheese. Nuts are a low-carb food, except for cashews, but they have a lot of calories and they are easy to overeat. I said earlier that with most keto-type foods, I just can't pig out on them. I'd just get tired of eating them first. But I really can pig out on nuts if I allow myself. And for me, nothing packs on the pounds like overeating nuts for a few days. Cheese is also a high-calorie, low-carb food, but it's not quite as tempting to me as to overeat with nuts. Number 5, resist having daily large keto desserts. It's a great day when you realize you can create low-carb desserts that taste every bit as good as the old sugary desserts you used to eat. But just because they're low-carb does not make them low-calorie, and if you get in the habit of stuffing yourself every night with huge keto desserts, you'll hinder your efforts to lose weight. Rule number 6, have dinner by 6 p.m. You need to give yourself a good long time between dinner and bedtime so that your food will be fully digested before your head hits the pillow. And finally, number 7, don't cheat on your keto or low-carb diet. Now, if you're at the perfect weight and your A1C has been in the 5s for a year or more, you might be able to get by with a cheat day here and there. But if you're significantly overweight and your blood glucose is totally out of control, the last thing you need to do is think about cheat days and cheat meals and cheat weekends and cheat vacations. You're in a war, and soldiers cannot afford to get lax. Okay, that's about it. Hope you found this helpful. If so, give it a thumbs up so YouTube will recognize its value and promote it to other diabetics. And consider subscribing to this channel and then click that bell icon so you'll be notified every time we post a new video. God bless. See you again soon.